Welcome to the Zierden podcast again. We have been talking about doing this for a long time.
We have. And for some reason, it just keeps getting pushed and pushed.
Probably because we both work full time and we have a lot of kids.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, so we've been talking about doing this episode for a long time just because, Teddy and I have really seen just a lot of things happen over the last year, and we've actually kept pretty quiet about them and talked about a lot of things between the two of us. And now we really just want to get into the nitty gritty of it and read some of the most burning comments that we've read about us over the last year and set a couple of things straight.
Yep, that we do.
You for sure have wanted to do this a little bit more than I have. Tell me why.
More so because I think coming from my perspective, and I'm not totally active on all the social media websites. I read the comments, I'm on them, I see them. Is it appropriate for an elected official's spouse to get on there and defend their...
You've had a few times, which
I have.
I appreciate.
Right, and I think other people
and
probably
they blame
have
me, right? They blame me. They're like, "Oh, this is Angel."
Right. Going on mine. But no, that's not the case. It's me talking for myself because I'm an adult, so I can speak freely as well. But no, I think it was more because I wasn't sure if it was appropriate at the time, and I know that we had talked to people that said that, oh, that was nice that he came out and said something, and but along those lines, it's like I just feel that it's better. I just left it alone after that, and there's no point, I guess, in my mind to argue with somebody on a keyboard if they see me in public and have the courage to come say something to me personally, then I will gladly talk to them.
Well, and I think that's probably the biggest problem is that these people typically who are on social media that type whatever they want without repercussion, they won't say a word to us.
Right.
Face to face. Even if we approach them, even if we buy them a beer.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's actually pretty crazy that people really just won't have conversations anymore. And I've reached out, this, I've reached out to almost every single critic. I have had some kind of interaction to be like, hey, do you want to have a phone call? Do you want to meet in person? Do you want to have coffee? And most of these things that are said online,
right,
that's the only place they'll say them, and they refuse to meet and have conversations.
Right, or back up their claims online in person, which is unfortunate.
Right.
Because it's obviously a lot harder to do when you're face to face with somebody and you can see their facial reactions and their body language and you're not there instantly to defend yourself.
Right.
Right? Versus saying whatever you want online.
Right.
It's almost like bullying.
Well, it is. It's cyberbullying,
right.
Which, again, and I think that the hardest part about it is that there's absolutely nothing somebody can do when you're an elected official. I mean, we've contacted lawyers and we've said, hey, this is not true. There's nothing you can do. You've run for office and it's part of the job, and it just feels very unfair. And that's why I'm really happy we have things like this podcast, because there's so many fun things that we've literally gone through. All of the screenshots. I have over 1,000 screenshots on my phone of people talking about us, talking about me, talking about what we've done. And we went through all of it and we were just man, I mean, how do we choose? What are some of the craziest things? But it's just there's no protections at all. Right. And what I think is harder is that everyone says, well, why don't we have good candidates that run for office, Democrat or Republican? Why are people not willing to put themselves out there? It's well, can you blame them for not? I mean, their business, are they going to put their business that they've built hard for in jeopardy because of a few people who don't care about them and all they want to do is lie? That's the problem with politics today.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you that nobody wants their name dragged through the mud, and their family and their kids and any other relatives that people can scrounge up online and pay for background checks, which have been done,
Yeah.
and message to us and whatever. Yeah, everyone has a past, but that doesn't define who you are and what you're trying to do moving forward in your life either.
Yeah. It's easy to look into someone else's life and be like, oh, why did they make that decision? Or,
Right.
oh, why did they do that? Well, until you're in that position, you can't possibly know
Right.
what was going on. And, like, that I think is the other thing about politics. Like, the lack of representation of people our age in politics honestly comes down to the fact that, like, yeah, when you're in your 20s and 30s, like, you do make decisions that you wouldn't make in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, or whatever the case is, or, you know, things that happen that you learn from. And, but also, like, a lot of young parents are really busy at home,
Right.
taking care of their kids, which is why we've been wanting to do this since the one crazy rumor, which we'll get to because it's really crazy. And it's hard because, like, you have to make time for it. And, like, a lot of young families, like, whether they're trying to build their business, they're trying to raise their kids, and it's like, why in the world would they throw themselves in the world of politics when, you know, they're trying to raise their family? And then what happens is the lack of representation in politics that really are not speaking for people who, you know, need to be spoken for. And that's been, I think, really tough too.
Right. Another thing that we've discussed offline, I mean, especially at the state level, is the monetary compensation to be a state rep or a senator.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're, mid 30s, whatever, $50,000 really doesn't go that far, especially if you have kids and you're trying to get things done. So maybe there are better options out there, and they're not running because it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Right? They don't. There's no reason for them to be dragged through the mud, like I said earlier, and then not be compensated fairly for it ultimately. Yeah. But we all know
100%.
that to pay them more, that means people would have to pay higher taxes. Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think too, I mean, just a shout out to Representative Josh Heinzman. I mean, we've gotten to know Josh really well.
Yep.
And Carrie and their kids, and we go to church with them, and you know, they've been a great sounding board for us because, you know, we are both involved in this, you being on planning and zoning, which is another thing that we'll, like, get to, but, like, you know, Josh has his business, and yet he is going down to the Capitol, and his wife is coming too, and their kids come with, and they do school down there, and it's like, there's so much sacrifice on every level of politics, especially when you have young kids, and I just feel like the average person doesn't or can't, for some reason, like, just appreciate that that person's running for politics. It doesn't, like, a position doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican.
Right.
They're putting themselves out there,
Exactly.
which is commendable. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on.
Yep.
You're sacrificing your family, your reputation, your business, your all of these things, and it's just like, for what, right? Like, you have to honestly believe in what you're doing and have support from your spouse to do that. And people just don't get it. And I feel like it's just very sad what we see online today.
Right. And I think it's fair or unfair to say that politicians or elected officials play the victim card. That's a bogus claim in my mind. I mean, there are people, yes, that do play the victim card, but what defines the victim, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many times do you have 18 baby daddies and you've lost 7 of your kids and whatever? Like, I mean, these fallacies are they're absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
And then they're written online, and then people jump on the bandwagon and just
Yeah.
continue on to that stuff. And it's like, does no one have the gall in them to call you or email you and say, hey, is this true?
No, of course they don't.
Well, I know, but
Yeah.
like, why aren't people doing that?
Yeah. Well, and that should lead us into kind of like, let's start reading some of the fun things that, let's start with that one actually, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of read some of them because I think we'll just talk about it, and, you know, it's funny. Like, it's not funny, but then, like, it's funny. Like, when you actually read something and you're like, what?
Right.
It hurts you at the same time. Like, it's laughable, like, what is said. And these are direct quotes. Like, I have gone through, like, so much of it, and they're direct quotes, and I'm not even going to say people's names as much as I want to. Honestly, if you go to Nextdoor, okay, and you look at the top 10 people who comment and complain on social media, you'll know who these people are. But we're just going to talk about them because there's no other way to defend myself. It's kind of like, I see something and it's like, well, I can't defend myself online because I'm going to look this way.
Right.
Or I can't say nothing because then I look guilty. Or, like, it's almost like you're just in this lose-lose. And it's such a hard place to be in. And so, we're just gonna jump right in.
Yep.
So speaking of to that, direct quote, I'm looking forward to the video promoting a different father for each child and how living in Breezy with 5 kids can afford an interviewer and a script to publish a podcast on YouTube every 2 months. Correction, I believe she only has 4 kids. One of her many baby daddies sued her for custody and won in 2011. Well, I'm pretty sure I only have 4. And I am pretty sure that I have custody of all of my children. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure I've never been sued in court for custody. Unfortunately, when parents separate, you go to court. When you get divorced, you go to court. Custody, you go to court. So the fact that somebody could go and look up a civil record, make this crazy assumption, post it online, is crazy.
And who cares?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, even if it were true, does that make you less of a leader?
And that's right. So, I mean,
apparently in some people's minds, right?
Well, and I think what's even crazier about that is like, okay, you have a divorce rate of 50% in this country. Mm-hmm. And so what you're talking about is the majority of people in this country. Mm-hmm. Half, who marriages didn't work out. You get pregnant outside of marriage. I mean, we're acting like this is uncommon, and it's not. And honestly, if I could go back and have the same knowledge and wisdom and values and everything else, like, maybe things would have been different. But, like, when you're kind of thrown into the world, sometimes choices are made. And I'm sorry, but, like, unless you're waiting for marriage, your chances of having a baby with somebody
are greater. Definitely.
Are significantly greater.
Yeah. And it's not like it didn't happen in the 60s, 70s, and 80s either.
It did.
When these other people were growing up, but it was more probably shunned at the time.
Yes.
But it happened to them and or their friends.
And tell your story in a sense of, like, not, like, revealing who, but just, like, kind of a, we just talked about the fact that DNA testing, right?
Yes.
You know someone whose cousin.
Yep. Their father was unfortunately passing away and on their deathbed, and they happened to get a DNA test for ancestry, just for the sake of doing it, right? Figure out where they're from, who they are, why they are the way they are, like most of us want to know. And there was a hit on however they do that for a father figure, and they confronted their mother, and it was her dad growing up wasn't actually her dad. It was her mom's previous boyfriend.
In the 70s.
Yeah, know, and this woman called somebody that I know and said, "Hey, just so you know, we're not biologically related. I still feel like we're cousins, and I don't want you to think any differently." And his response was, "Whatever, normal, someone with a heart. That doesn't matter to me, right? Like, but it's unfortunate that dad who did end up passing away and never knew the real truth.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they probably know the real truth now, in heaven, but
right.
It's just a hard thing to deal with.
And I think that it's just crazy that people are still trying to use those things against people as if it's not, obviously it's not what we want to happen.
Oh, exactly.
But, like, the fact that people are using it as leverage or as, like, a tool to,
a weapon.
Like, hurt somebody is beyond me. Like, it's crazy, especially in today's culture and everything else. I mean, So, I mean, that's, yeah, and that's, we can go into so much more detail.
So they're all yours.
Yeah, they're all mine.
Yep.
I have custody of all of them.
Right. And there's only 4.
And I'm very, very, I love my children dearly, and God does not make mistakes. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll just kind of go on. You know, here's another quote. I really feel sorry for her poor family living with the arrogant, entitled bully on a full-time basis. How does that make you feel? Because you live with me full-time. So.
It's tough. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
We have strict rules, and we can't do anything that she doesn't want to do, and that's how I live my life. No. And obviously, none of that is true. And in our reality, who would want to marry somebody like that? Like, you know, that's a giant red flag.
Yeah.
Right? If someone's a dictator, but why would you be with them?
Yeah.
Right? To begin with.
Yeah.
And like they're going to control your life. Like, no, you still have freedom. I still have freedom. I can go golf. I can go do whatever I want. I bring the boys. We do.
Do I bully you?
Everything do. Through our marriage, no. It's not bullying, but every guy knows it's kind of bullying. But I think all the women want us to become better men and better people in general.
Yeah.
So they just push us a little further than we want to be pushed sometimes.
Women tend to do that, though, you know? I mean...
The longer we're married, I'm understanding that even more. And, you know, I think back to, I don't remember what comedian it was. He said, you know, if you have a girlfriend or a wife or a grandma or a mom, you're constantly being trained.
Yeah.
And I mean,
in a good way, we should be pushing each other. I mean, I think
some things you just have to accept and just move on.
You know, the other word too, like entitled. Like,
yep.
Have you ever felt like I was entitled to anything?
No, I don't. Entitled's a hard word for me to describe you with. In particular, just knowing your background and where you grew up and how you grew up, and even how we live now. I mean, you worked for everything you've had and have gotten through and made you who you are today. And that didn't come from entitlement. You weren't handed anything.
And I can be hard on people, but
yeah.
I mean, and that.
But you want better for them.
But you want better for them,
right?
And I think that's where I think there's also like a female-male thing that plays a role in that, right? Where it's like that typically doesn't come from a female, you know, that like hardness of like, and that's kind of where people throw out these words, right? And I'll give.
Can I just tack on one thing there?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I think about, you know, playing hockey or any sport for that matter. Like your coaches, they'll tell you like if I'm not yelling at you, then something's wrong.
Yeah.
They're gonna yell at you because they expect more out of you.
And they want the best for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yelling at you or trying to coach you, however you want to look at it. They want more out of you. They know you have it in you. You just have to go out there and do it.
Right. And I think, you know, and this is, again, where, like, reading some of this, it becomes hard and you have to learn how to deal with it. But I love just addressing it. Like, so here's a couple fun ones. The mayor uses the legal system to finance her lifestyle. Facts are facts. Well, I think that's really funny.
Well, how is that a fact?
Yeah,
so you need to elaborate a little bit more on how you have funded your lifestyle through
my $350 a month that I get.
Yeah, right.
So you might as well give them entire fund to build Angel City because whatever benefits her will happen. She is most likely trying to find out what the maximum tax levy to charge for next year. That is how council can increase your property taxes and pretend they are not responsible for the increase. I think it's really interesting the way that people think about taxes because when you don't understand how taxes work, it is really easy. And I'm going to go to one more because this person's actually running, which she is the worst mayor we've ever had. The property tax had done nothing but gone up since she has been in office. God help us if she ever runs for governor. So I've been in office for 2 years. And the housing market blew up. Yep. Everyone's property tax, like property values went up in the last 2 years since I've become mayor.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how someone can honestly believe that even being mayor or on council for 2 to 4 years, that I'm somehow responsible for
Solely you.
Solely me, right?
Yep.
And then to go and run for council,
Right.
like, how can you?
Well, they're going to be in for a rude awakening when they
100%.
understand how it actually works.
But that already happened, right? Like, so I ran. So when I first ran, I mean, listen, you can be in politics, but until you're in an elected official role and you're there every single meeting and you're there really reading between the lines and everything that you're doing, you never fully understand the big picture, no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. If you're in people in the state government, they don't even know from a city government, right? Every level of government has a different, it's just different. And I just find it very interesting because I did run on the fact that I wanted to lower property taxes. I'm still fiscally conservative. But then when I really got into it, I realized too that we really didn't have the ability to do that in the sense that we thought. The last mayor actually of Breezy Point, who was running against me, he ran on the same principle, and that didn't happen either. And so I think that it is very interesting, and I will say that, I was naive in thinking that that was a possibility, but then when I really got into it and realized that there's so many aspects of taxes that are out of your control, and then there's so many the needs. We don't even pay high taxes in Breezy Point in general.
Yeah, I mean, you get closer to
crazy.
Sartell, where I grew up and lived and had a house before we moved up here. I mean, we paid way more taxes than even here.
Right.
And you open up your tax statement, everyone looks at the bottom line, right? Like it's all going to the city. Well, that's not the case because you have any school issues or levies or the county taxes you as well.
More so than the state or the city. So
and with that, like that, it's not like the city just decides what percent they're going to take of the valuation of your home. It's all done through the state. So if anyone wants to go and do their civic duty and go down to the Capitol and lobby for them to change that mathematical formula, then they are more than welcome to do so. But at the city level, it can't be done.
Right. Well, and I think too, one of the other things that I was really shocked at was the amount of threats, indirectly. And I'll kind of read one. Poor Angel. As long as my email's on your page, I will never leave. Lots of sites allow business reviews. If you don't remove the post ASAP, I may just file a civil suit against you. How will that look in the next election, right? So that was one thing. And she did actually contact an executive director of a nonprofit board I sit on. She tried to put numerous one-star business reviews on my business accounts. And then I had a couple other threats back before I did my interview with Hanky about my bankruptcy, as if they were trying to use that as leverage to get us to do something with the disc golf course. And there were 2 people tied to that.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, people will literally stop at nothing.
Right.
To get what they want. It's craziness.
And it's even more wild to me that it's in such a small town, that people are willing to go to such extreme lengths.
And the fact is I didn't do what they wanted, and it didn't matter if I listened. Because I did listen to what they had to say. I just didn't respond in the manner that they wanted me to. And I think that, again, it's crazy that, and I'm not even discussing all of it because there was so much more to that.
Yeah.
And some of this stuff is so crazy to me. It's beyond. And I think too, let's go back to the Democrat and Republican thing. Okay. When we first met, because I think this is really funny in a sense, you were really far right.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theory right. And I'm not listening.
Yeah. And I don't know. Have I been pulled forward or more towards the middle? Yes. But some of the conspiracy theories, sometimes I wear a tinfoil hat, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But what we realized is that conspiracy theories exist even in the city. So so let's go to the 4 Zierdens, okay?
Yep.
So this is crazy. This is not normal. right?
Yeah.
So Joe Zierden is, he does the public works director.
Yep.
And his wife, Megan.
Yep.
Megan Zierden was the chair of Park and Rec when I came in as mayor.
Yep.
Now, when I decided to run for mayor, I had no idea there was Zierdens,
I
in
didn't
city
either.
government at all. And Zierden is not a very common last name.
No,
and
it is not.
It stemmed all the way back from, I think, the two brothers.
Correct.
That moved. So when I was going to run, there was a spot on planning and zoning that was open for 6 months.
Yes, it was.
And you have a background in construction, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be wanting to serve the city.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you? Again, serving the city had nothing to do with
hidden agendas
or anything.
Yep.
So
because that term's been thrown out there.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yep.
And so I found it really interesting that the conspiracy theory of
right.
the Zierdens are taking over the city. And we did find out fifth cousins. You and Joe are fifth cousins.
We are.
That was a really funny conspiracy theory.
And there was another comment out there about how you had appointed me to that position, which is false.
Was false. Yep.
It was Rogan Camp.
That did, yeah.
That actually appointed me in the previous council. So just to clear the air on that.
Yeah. And then what was even funnier is every project, people would go online and be like, oh, they're profiting. Oh, they're profiting. It's just, it was so delusional.
Right.
But yet it's still out there as if you have anything to do with government bidding on projects.
I don't have anything to do with specifically Breezy Point government projects.
Right.
And nor do I want it.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I don't. It's bad business in my mind, and then it just creates crap storms like we've seen in the past.
Well, and I think too, going back to from the conspiracy theory to Democrat, Republican, even though city government is nonpartisan, it doesn't matter. So I'll read you two things.
Mm-hmm.
I assume she was a liberal at heart. Maybe you should move to Minneapolis with the rest of the folks ruining our state.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had multiple other comments about the fact that because I didn't vote a certain way or think a certain way, I wasn't Republican enough, or I wasn't, one side or the other. Oh, look at her. She's going to these Democratic dinners. By the way, I will be attending the next Democratic dinner in September with my amazing Democratic friends who I support. And I think, again, the biggest thing in politics is we created these labels as if you cannot have friends on the other side. You cannot agree with someone on the other side. You cannot think that spending money a certain way, it's beyond me that this is turned into what it's turned into. Instead of saying, you know what, I'm a free thinker.
Right.
I don't have to believe everything that Republicans believe. I don't have to believe everything that Democrats believe. But I can sit here and work across aisles and
make stuff happen.
Isn't that what we want? But we have the pushback.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I think that it's craziness.
It reminds me of a conversation I had with an elected official recently, and you're not pure enough Republican.
Yeah.
For some of these people, and then the other comment, people are mad because they didn't stop the Democrats, right? Which tells me that they don't understand how the government works to begin with, because there's a trifecta. So any way that the Republicans would have voted, it wouldn't have mattered. They would have been outvoted. So then if you want them to somehow have power to be able to shut them down now when they have the trifecta, then the Democrats would have that same power if the Republicans had the trifecta. So, I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it too,
No,
and that's what I understand that part, but that's not how the world works.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to a fun topic of City Hall. You have a couple things if you want to pick, because with City Hall, this has been I still okay, so I work on a lot of things outside of city government. I'm working on homelessness stuff and restorative justice for youth and childcare resources and workforce housing and immigration, all these things that they matter. And the biggest thing about City Hall is the firestorm it's created over what? Like
Taxes.
over
I think the
what?
taxes are going up
but
because
they
of it.
don't even understand how it's working. And the fact that a lot of this hate has come from this topic alone
Right.
it blows my mind.
Well, the interesting part to me is that there's one or two particular people that come to the city council meeting. They listen. They try to comprehend what's said. They take their notes. They go back home and they type out this big thing on Nextdoor. And then all of a sudden, people are jumping on it, spreading rumors, blah, 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 blah. I mean, that's how it works. But it just blows my mind that the comprehension from what they heard to what they wrote. I mean, they're a terrible reporter, if that's the case.
Right.
I mean, they should, have something to dictate for them.
Yeah.
And write it as it was said.
Right.
Not spun.
Yeah.
To make it look like it was the mayor's fault, and in a weak mayor system,
everything is it's all my fault. And what's crazier is like we've been working on City Hall for a year.
Yep.
And what people don't understand is like if you're not going to show up to the workshops and to the meetings, to the open houses, participate from the beginning, you don't get to show up on the decision day.
Right.
And then say, I want my voice heard.
Right.
You had a year.
Yep.
And what people also don't understand about decisions that you make in government, it's not one decision. It's a collection of decisions that were made in a time span that you end up with the choices that you have. The problem is hindsight's 2020. It's so much easier to go, oh, well, we should have done this and should have this. We didn't know that 8 months ago. So when we were choosing all of these things, when we were deciding on these things, like, you can't know. And my thing is this. We spent a year working on City Hall, and every quote is about me being, oh, if I don't get what I want, this. And it's like, wait, I didn't get what I felt was right.
Right.
In the bottom line of City Hall. So I don't understand why they're even talking. And some of these actually are hilarious because, I mean...
Yeah.
You could just pick out, like...
Oh, here's... I wasted 2 hours talking with her. It will be a waste of your time. She will try to talk to you into approving the new City Hall, expensive City Hall. The best thing to do is send another email to CC members Ball, Scott, and Jensen in support of the remodel and addition version. Okay. End quote. And what happened? How did you vote on that? Let's for anyone out there, you can go back. It's been recorded. It's on YouTube. I'm pretty sure. Actually, I'm not pretty sure. I'm 1,000% sure you voted for the remodel and the addition.
Yeah. Which is, it still blows my mind. So let's go back to the 2 hour thing because
2 hours.
You get paid $350 a month as mayor. Okay. Yep. 2 hours of your time. Everyone on council except one because he's retired, which there's nothing wrong with that. We work. Okay. So to spend 2 hours talking to one person, I missed. Our son started the childcare that day. I missed his bus talking to this resident. I was in a panic because I had gotten into this conversation. I was trying to answer all of his questions. Right. And I got off and I missed, and I'll never forget this. And like what he did to me after, like, hurt because I was like, in what world do you take up 2 hours of somebody's time and then go on social media and tell people don't spend a single moment talking to her? Like that to me is so disrespectful. It's really cool that you were in Arizona because you're retired. Right. So you have all of this time. You're not even here half the year. Right. And you're talking to somebody who gave 2 hours of your time and now you're criticizing for it. Not to mention, I didn't want the remodel. I thought long-term value-wise, it wasn't what I wanted. Yep. And that's what they supported. And they even stated that they supported that. Yep. Except one of them, that wasn't right. But right. And then at the end of all of it, I voted for the thing that they said was the right decision. And yet...
No, it's still wrong.
It's still wrong.
Now they're trying to go get 70 votes.
Yeah, it's still wrong. So it doesn't even matter what I
signatures.
Do. It doesn't matter what I do. I mean, and that's the thing about social media. It's like people who can honestly go on social media and read this stuff and believe it, there's a problem with that.
Yeah. Intelligence. Like, if you're going to make a decision about somebody, you should probably talk to that person.
Right.
Or at least hear it from the horse's mouth. You know, like if you don't know anybody or this person that your group of friends is talking about and you're just jumping on the bandwagon and all of a sudden you just think they're a bad person because of so-and-so said this about them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, granted, they are your friend and you probably take their word for it. But at the same time, if you really want to know the real truth, go find out for yourself.
Right.
Call, email.
Yeah.
Sit down with them and have a conversation. And you know, that whole comprehension thing about what somebody said is valid at that point, because maybe the person that told you they were a bad person couldn't understand what they were talking about or why they were saying the things that they were saying.
Well, what's funny is how many times have people asked me to coffee or had conversations and said, so-and-so told me to stay away from you.
Yep.
And we've become really good friends with people.
Yeah, not just local people. I mean, people running for U.S. Senate were told to stay away from you.
Yeah.
And then they came and sat down and had coffee with you.
People in the party. Like, I mean, literally on every aspect. Because, and this is my advice to anybody, like anyone that is telling you to stay away from someone, you should question that.
Right.
Like, why are you listening to somebody else? I don't care if they're your family or your best friend. Go find out for yourself. Mm-hmm. Why are you listening to someone else? They obviously don't like this person for a reason. But here's the thing. If someone has that much of a distaste for someone that they don't actually know, who has the real problem?
Right.
Truly, like, you have to ask yourself, like, that question. And people don't think critically anymore.
Right. I mean, if you're not, you know, making waves, really, are you even changing anything, or are you just falling in line like a good soldier would?
Yeah. Well, and I think, like, let's go back to, City Hall. So let's go back to the Landis thing, because I find this to be hilarious. So here's a quote.
Yep.
But if our small town is supposed to spend $4 million to buy a building, probably after another 4 to 5 to update and renovate. Again, private buyer and private remodel. Okay, this is a quote from a couple months ago. Your wife this is to you actually. Your wife keeps pushing citizens of Breezy to pay $8 million for a community center.
Well, this quote I have here says it's going to be 10 to 15.
Yes.
So I'm not sure how much you're pushing to spend.
Yeah, me either. Apparently, there's a range of $4 million to
15
million, right?
Yep.
And
that includes the remodel,
of course, right? And what was interesting is, like, you know, I came into this, you know, community centers, they're tough for cities because they do have a loss. But the thing is that what's been kind of trending across the state, and because I'm friends with mayors all over the state, including the cities, you know, is the private partnerships, right? You have community centers that have partnered with Lifetime. You have community centers that have, you know, done different partnerships with transportation and all these things. So when Landis came about, again, brought to me by a resident, I was like, oh, but what if? Like, what if we could do, what does that look like? And what was craziest about the special meeting, was that one of the guys who I don't think has a good reputation in town, from what I know, go to the meeting and give hell.
Yeah.
They didn't even know why they were there.
Right. They were
no idea why they were even there. And, like, that was probably the hardest part, was because, and on top of it, like, when you call a special meeting, there's not supposed to be, like, an open forum. By the way, special meetings don't have open forums. Right. So the fact that residents are literally sitting here and going, oh, the mayor doesn't let you talk in a gag order and all these things, like, go ask any other city if there's open forum at a special meeting. Okay?
No, because you're there to talk about one thing.
Exactly. And prior to me, you don't talk about anything that is on the agenda at an open forum.
Or a limited time.
But what did I do? I let them come up.
No, you took away their speech, though.
But no, at the special meeting.
Oh, yes,
I let
at that
them
one.
come up, yell at me, criticize me, talk about federal taxes, like all these crazy things.
Yeah.
I didn't have to, but I sat there and took it.
Yep.
I sat there and took the criticism, which was insanity. And all I wanted was to look at, hey, let's just look at this option. And people lost their minds.
Yeah.
Because of what? Social media?
Exactly.
It's crazy.
To me, like, it's commendable for you to do stuff outside of just being mayor or on city council for that matter, and looking at how you can help the city or benefit the citizens, and not just show up to the meeting and vote no on everything.
On everything.
Like a particular council member.
Because that's going to get us to the next level. Like,
Right.
that's going to move our city forward.
And the problem, then that same council member is, you know, they don't like this, they don't like that, they don't like this, but they have zero solutions.
Oh, yeah.
You know, a wise person once told me, if there's a problem, you better come to me with 2 solutions.
Exactly.
So why are you on city council? If you can't even come up with a solution or are not willing to take anything by the horns and deal with it, and just say, oh, I can do that. I can do that from next door. I can say, yeah, we got problems.
Well, and I think what's worse, too, is like, you know, when it comes to council, you are one body. Like, even if you don't want something and you vote 3-2, it still is that you're still on that council. And, you know, a really good example was Cross Lake when their library community center burned down back in the 90s. And it was a 3-2 vote to rebuild it. 3-2, right? That is almost not having it. And the city of Cross Lake today can't imagine not having it because of the thousands of people it serves, right? And that was back in the 90s. So, and what's interesting is like, and I mean, I would think that we would learn on the national stage and at the state level, like authority figures, the way they treat other people in the same positions, it is a trickle-down effect, right? So, like, if you have a council member treating another council member poorly, that gives other people in their minds, the right to treat them the exact same way. So you have a council member that's, you know, on social media saying things like, there's no way she'll ever be governor. It's a grand delusion at its finest, but yet it fits into her narcissistic way of thinking, which makes her a person to avoid, who also said, vote her out and all these things. And it's like, okay, if I was your daughter, which I could be your daughter, I'm old enough to be your daughter. If your daughter came to you and said, I have ambitions, I have dreams, like I've had these things since I was a kid and I love politics and I want to change the world. Is that what you're going to say to her? Is it? And I don't, it's crazy to me that people use ambition against them. Right. Instead of saying, you know what, like.
That's jealousy, I think.
It's crazy, though. And then they expect that you're going to work with them. And it's like, how can you be on council and treat people that way and still expect that you're going to get things done? Like, you're not. No. And every city
Why would anyone want to work with you?
Well, you know? But what's crazier is when you have people that come in already with a vendetta. Right. Whether they had a mutual separation years prior.
To the same city.
From the last female mayor. Yep. I don't know. That sounds like an agenda to me. Or you ran on the basis that you were going to do X, Y, and Z. Yep. And because you didn't accomplish that.
Conspiracy theory.
Yeah. You no longer want to work with the city to do other things. I mean, I think that people are not really looking at the full picture of like.
Or not wanting to vote in the ad hoc streets committee just because you were the mayor and the one appointing them. Well, you were that council member specifically pushed to have a committee. Yeah. And there was a committee of 5, and there were 5 applicants. There isn't much choice.
Well, and what's funny is you go back to conspiracy theory and you go, well, one of those applicants for the streets committee was on council the years you were city administrator?
Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, I guess you could. I don't know where that goes, but, you know, conspiracy theories, right? They're easy to come up with. Yeah. But
they come from somewhere. Part of it has to be true.
Well, and I think with Landis, you know, we look at the latest gear building, and there is, and what's funny is, like, in this quote. Yeah. Again, private buyer and private remodel. There's a private buyer, and it'll be a private remodel. And the reason I brought it back was because they wanted to look at, okay, if I bought the building, if I remodeled the building, if I put a gym in the 57,000 square foot building, do the residents of Breezy Point want to use it? Maybe. God forbid we look at partnering with a private investor
Right.
in a large building for the residents of Breezy Point.
Why can't you look at it?
Why can we not look at that as an option? Like,
Right.
I don't even understand. Like, people just jump to these crazy conclusions.
Yeah.
It's literally crazy. All right, so let's talk about the most recent rumor.
Let's hear it.
I would say that this has been difficult, actually, because I remember, like, reading it, and I was just like, wow. Like, wow. I mean, it really affected me for a couple days. I mean, I didn't even want to run again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been really, really something that I can't believe was even written. So we're gonna read it.
Let's read it again.
Again. Well, I guess can't we all get along and also never talk about or go after anyone in public? Only works one way. Let me start by saying there was no small children or a daughter being trained. So tonight at Dockside Bar, right after Johnny Cash show, by the way, if there are things that are not like grammar-wise,
Yeah.
I'm just reading what he wrote because I think he wrote it at like 2:30 in the morning.
Probably.
After bar close. So he did.
Yep.
So at Dockside Bar, right after Johnny Cash show, myself, someone else, because I'm not even going to give them credence at all, and a couple other friends were standing and some sitting at the end of the main bar when 3 free Coors Lights arrived and we were told the breezy mayor Angel bought them. I personally thought, that was cool. As we all know, I've called her out. So after a few minutes, she walked over to our small group and said, I bought you boys those beers. See, I'm not such a bad person. We all chuckled a tiny bit, and I said, I really don't think you are. We may not agree on most anything, but by doing this made it seem you're okay. Literally, the words were barely out of my mouth when she went full-scale attack on so-and-so. It was very obvious she was extremely intoxicated. But hey, we all party. After a couple minutes, another guy standing there who is on a city board told her to calm down. This isn't the place. But to no avail, full-scale attack. And so kept telling her several times. We agree to disagree. And she was getting louder and flailing her arms like, how dare you ever question me? Then finally the mayor's husband came and physically grabbed her and took her away. I know this story is long, but after this public performance tonight, it might be wise to step aside. Hopefully, with her aspirations to move up in office, she will seek some counseling.
Well, there's a couple of things in there that aren't true. First of all, it was only 2 beers.
It was 2 beers.
Not 3.
So let's just like get that over. There's 2.
And I bought them.
Yeah.
We just happen to share a bank account.
We do happen to share a bank account.
Yes. I wasn't there for the entire thing.
Right.
Right? When I got there, you were talking to Mr. So-and-so.
And so.
Who was sitting at the bar.
Yep.
And
by the way, we had just gotten there an hour earlier.
Yes. Yep.
And what I find even more funny about that is I spoke to one of our breezy cops outside as we were leaving. Mm-hmm. So very interesting. I mean, I think they would know if I was extremely intoxicated.
I would agree.
And I still breastfeed.
Yeah.
I breastfeed my baby, and I have to wake up in the middle of the night. So there's no way that I would be
extremely intoxicated.
Coming home extremely intoxicating.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
So there's that, right? So let's just debunk a few of those things, right?
Yeah.
So I will go into why, I may be very naive in thinking that, like, I've always gotten along with, like, pretty much everybody. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, there are people that don't like me, of course. Like, that's like anybody. But, in another world, I felt like I would be friends with these people. But, now I'm learning, like, no, I wouldn't actually be friends with them. I would be acquaintances with them. But going over there, like, who would send somebody 2 beers only to go and attack them?
Right.
Come on, like logically, does that even make sense?
No, it was essentially an olive branch.
Exactly. And so when I did go over there, okay, I never said I'm not a bad person. I said, in another life, we would be friends. Yep. And I laughed. And first of all, he never said a word. Because these people don't say words.
No, because it's kind of like we talked about before, where no one will say anything to your face.
No.
They only type stuff up like that.
They love to type.
Because on Nextdoor, if you go on there, it'll tell you how many hours ago it was posted.
Oh, yeah. So you know exactly. So
if you can do simple math, you can figure it out.
Exactly. And so, but then I turned to the other guy who was sitting on the bar. And, there was a couple things that we didn't talk about, which was the daycare thing. Mm-hmm. And I will just go into that really quickly because one of the most recent posts, actually, from someone who really needs to stop posting on Nextdoor because I don't think she realizes, just how much people are annoyed by it. She goes, I place a vote of no confidence in our present mayor. Nothing happens because that mayor tries to insert pet projects, daycare. Okay, what's so crazy about childcare, first of all, I ran on that principle. That was actually something, when I ran, I literally listed out things that I wanted to do.
Yeah, I think she listed that in a post after.
I listed that. I wanted to expand childcare options because we have the second highest need for childcare. Mm-hmm. And what people don't realize, and what I was inserting, was that daycare, the centers are regulated by the state.
Correct.
Which makes them not profitable, which is why they're closing. And in rural Minnesota, you have a really tough time finding people to work for $13, $14
Ask stepping stones.
Yes.
Because they just closed in Jenkins.
And I'm working with her. Mm-hmm. I need to call her, but there's another option. It's a special childcare licensing. And basically what it does is it takes in-home licensing, which is regulated by the county, yep. and you can insert that into a commercial space. Yep. So Hills, Minnesota did that in one of their tax forfeited buildings where they got grant funding to build out the space, and then mm-hmm. a licensed daycare provider took their in-home license out of their house, yep. put it into the space. Yep. And what how
did they vote that through?
Yeah. Because they needed it in their community.
Exactly. And they understand that.
Exactly. But the fact is there are people in council that say, well, it's not our problem. It's an everybody problem, right? And
just because you don't have kids.
Exactly. And most people in government and these people who are fighting this, they don't have kids. Nope. They don't live here full time. Yep. They don't even vote here. One of these people doesn't even vote here. Right. And they come here to drink all summer. Yeah. And then they leave. And it's like you're not here to pick up the pieces for your actions. Right. And so what I was trying to do was bring to light the resource of the in-home child care special licensing that can be used in a building, any building, right. a basement of a church. If we were to build new for City Hall, we would have this empty space. Mm-hmm. We could utilize that space to have right. these in-home child care
But the government wouldn't run it. The city wouldn't run it.
The government doesn't run it.
All they would do is own the building.
Yes, and people didn't want to listen to what I had to say. They only wanted to say that I supported taxpayers paying for other people's kids. Right. Which is crazy. Mm-hmm. Which is what stemmed into this full-on attack. Yeah. Full-on, right? I must be crazy. Mm-hmm. So, and I looked at him because he's posted multiple times on social media, and I never get a chance. This is the first chance that I've ever seen him face to face. Right. Okay, first time. He doesn't come to council meetings. No. He doesn't come to workshops. He doesn't. All he does is sit on social media.
Well, and he's gone half the year.
And he doesn't even vote here. But all I said to him was, I wanted to let you know that I don't support taxpayers paying for childcare. Right. Now, was it the place? No, it wasn't. But it was the only time that I knew that I was going to see someone face to face. I'm a face to face kind of person. Right. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you on social media. You want to have a real conversation? Have a conversation with me in person. Exactly. That's the way it used to be. Yeah. And guess what?
Social
that was the only
everything.
time. I bought them you bought them a beer, whatever it was. I want to say, here I am. Hey, just wanted to let you know I don't. And he goes, well, that's not what I saw. That's not what I read on social media. And I'm like, but I'm telling you. And I talk with my hands, right? Just like I am now. Just now, right? And it's this is exactly what I did. I'm telling you now, I don't. So you're telling me that you don't care that I'm telling you something so that you will stop lying about me
Right.
online.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like that's a crazy thing to request from somebody.
No.
So, and yes, so there was one person who was on a committee with you,
mm-hmm.
who came up to us after the fact,
Yep.
which I think is funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, no, it's not fair. It's like, why are you still going to go post something that you know isn't true when I'm telling you that it's not true? So then the next thing he said was, and the other person who wrote this post was standing like over here. By the way, it's loud in there.
Yep.
So he didn't say anything. I doubt he even heard the conversation.
Right.
And then he looked at me and he goes, what about the community center? You said you didn't support taxpayer-funded community center. I'm like, I don't. I said, what I'm supporting right now is a private investor who is potentially going to build a gym in Landis. We need to look at, can we partner so that our residents can have access to that private gym? And he goes, it doesn't matter. We can agree to disagree.
Right.
And I'm like, I was like shocked in a sense where I'm like, how? Like, how is it that you can sit here and look at someone in the face and say to them, I don't care what you're telling me
in person. Like,
they're so deep in their lies already that they can't backtrack because they've been painting this picture on social media.
Right.
And you said that to
me.
And
now they have followers.
Yeah, exactly. And what's funny is you came over and you could tell the rest of the story because I think that it's interesting that was the takeaway.
Well, I was only there for a few short minutes, and I just whispered in your ear. I said, hey, they're going to post this on social media, so we should go. And lo and behold, I was right.
Yeah, 2 hours later.
It's not just a hat rack, folks.
That's funny because we always say that. But it's so interesting that someone could take that entire situation and post that. And then there's other people that were commenting like, she needs to get mental help and she has an alcohol problem and like
because they see you there every weekend.
Oh yeah, because we go out every weekend. Much. Like we get out maybe one night a month for a date night or whatever. We don't even get to go out that often, which is, again, these people go out every Friday and Saturday. I mean, that's probably more.
Well, you see the golf carts parked outside when you're there at
and there's nothing wrong with going out.
No, there isn't, but we're not there.
Yeah, it just, and I just feel like at this point, it's almost like you wonder why also people in political office grow cold.
Yeah.
It's, you have to protect yourself.
Yeah, you got to put armor on or have thick skin.
I don't know. It's just been so crazy. And just, I mean, like I said, 1,000 screenshots. I mean, you and I have had so much said about us. And it's like, all we've ever wanted to do is like do the right thing for the city.
Yep.
For our kids, for the future of Breezy, and it's just been challenging.
And I think, on city council, you're making a decision today that spans, 20 years, right? Or 30 years, whether that's a building or disc golf or whatever that case may be. And I don't know that everyone on council understands that, and or they always want more time to talk about it, and more time to talk about it, more time to talk about it. That's why government is not good at running anything.
Yeah.
So that's leads to having a private partnership with the government because they run stuff better. And you know that. Look at the licensing in the state of Minnesota. It's run terribly.
That private runs better than government.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're faster, they're more efficient, they know what they're doing. There's just too many hoops and red tape to jump through in my mind. Yeah. Right? To make things run efficiently.
Right. How do you think that like social media has affected the way you view like politics? Because obviously like you've followed politics for a long time, but like now like how has it been seeing yourself like on that other side?
Well, first of all, I never thought that would ever happen to me, and I'd be in politics to begin with. Not that I'm in politics, but I'm in politics.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me, you read news stories about, like we talked about before, cyberbullying and people saying whatever online, and, you see it even on Facebook or whatever social media you're on. So it comes to me not surprising at all, right? Like people, whatever it is on social media that makes people invincible and whatever, have all the confidence in the world. It's kind of crazy in my mind. And the other thing that really kind of flabbergasts me is that most of the commenters are retired. So I'd say 65 and older, and they're making all these comments. Like, these are your golden years, really. Like, why are you on Nextdoor and worrying about government and having this weird obsession of the mayor, my wife, and like criticizing all that? Like, go spend your time doing something else. Get a hobby.
You spend your whole life working. It's like...
And then you're going to be worried about politics inside of a town of 3,000 people?
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to change something, go do it at a higher level.
Yeah.
Right? Like this.
Or you could still run. Why are you
Yeah,
running
they can run
then?
for office.
Why don't you guys run for office?
Because they probably have too many things in their closet and they know that it'll come out.
But they're so quick to criticize everybody else, and that's like...
Right, I don't disagree with you. I think that there has to be something else to do. But, when you are here, right, in town, all summer long, you talk about what's going on in town.
In the bar, that's the main place, right?
Bar scene, yep. Or around a campfire at someone's house after the bar, or whatever the case may be. Then, it comes October, November, we're leaving. Yeah. We go and probably do the same thing in whatever little community they stay in there.
Yeah.
And it just repeats itself over and over. And it's like,
how
can you be that invested? Like, and they're not even an elected official and they're that invested in the city.
Yeah.
Like, but don't get me wrong.
Invested, though? Like, what?
Well, they're stakeholders.
Oh, yeah, the stakeholders. We've been told that a few times.
Yes.
Oh, the stakeholders in this town.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that?
I don't know, every resident. But apparently there's some major stakeholders that are not happy.
No, I think that the people who have had cabins here for, 20, 30 years, like not everybody obviously, but there's a select few people.
Mm-hmm.
They've been here for so long that they somehow think that they have a bigger say or they are a bigger stakeholder or I don't even know, to be honest. It's
or they've lived here their whole life or whatever the case may be.
Whatever the case is, but it's like, I still don't really understand. And it's like, if you're going to be that invested, be actually invested.
Right.
Go to the meetings.
Yep.
Think critically. Sit
down.
Come
up with solutions.
Come up with solutions. I mean, that's another thing where it's just like, you're not giving us any solutions. No, in fact, you are. You're telling us that you support something 6 months prior, and then decision day, now all of a sudden you don't support it. I don't think people understand. People don't even know what they're fighting anymore.
No, and I think we've talked about this before too. They're upset from the national level all the way down to their local level where you guys are tangible. Like, they can go to a city council meeting, they see you in the grocery store or wherever, and then they can just berate you or yell at you or tell you you're doing a terrible job
you're right
and
there.
you should need to do it this way. They can't call up President Biden and say, "Hey, you're doing a terrible job."
They would if they could.
Right, and people but they don't even waste their time making dumb comments on social media about President Biden. But they do it here in town to your neighbor, someone that you go to school with, someone that their kids probably go to school with your grandkids. And then that's how you're treating these people. Right. We're all human. Right.
We all have done things and make mistakes and again, hindsight 2020. And going back to that crazy rumor, it was like I went to the resort to get footage because I wanted to clear my name.
Yep.
And I was told that I had to have a police report and the police request the footage. Right. So that was kind of a little bit of that sucks because as much as I wanted to clear my name, I wasn't allowed to do that, but it does give me a lot of satisfaction that someone, and I won't say who, high up in the resort and dockside and whatever, did go up to one of them and said, "You're lucky you didn't say those things about my wife."
Right.
And honestly, I hope that hit home for them. I hope that put stuff in perspective to say, you know what? Whatever they think they're doing to me, I do have support from a lot of people that they don't really understand. And what's even more sad is the people who are taking our signs, right? So you have to lie on social media. Yep. You have to take signs
Yep.
You know, you have to call out people who have my sign in your yard and criticize them for it.
Yep.
My Lily is scared of these people because they've done it at her work.
Right.
Like, how far do you have to go to get what you want? But yet, I'm the one who is bullying to get what I want. What have I gotten?
Yeah,
I
nothing.
haven't gotten anything.
$300 a month.
I mean, yeah. So it's just like I'm really glad that we were able to do this because it's like there's not a lot of ways to really like get information out there, and typing
It'll take a long time.
it take a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's fun that we did it, and it's nice that they get to hear from you too because apparently I'm so terrible to live with, and you have to drag me away for attacking people because that's just
Yeah. That's uncalled for, and very unfortunate. Can't take you anywhere.
You cannot. You know that actually to be true.
Yeah, I could take you there. We just can't leave anytime until you talk to every single person.
Yes, exactly.
And I used to be that way, but I've grown older and colder.
Well, I mean, I think that everyone does. I think
Right.
the older you get in life, the more you're just like, God, I don't know about people anymore.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah. But, all right. Well, that is all we have. And if anyone does have any questions about anything they do see online, I would highly encourage you to reach out to me.